What would you do if one wrong text message changed your entire life? For Claire Bennett, a hard-working single mother in East Austin, life was already stretched thin. Her 5-year-old daughter Maya was gravely ill, medical bills stacked higher than she could pay, and her ex-husband had long stopped answering her pleas. One desperate night, Claire typed a message meant for him only to send it to the wrong man. Not just any man, Ethan Caldwell, a billionaire CEO with secrets of his own, and a fortress of rules built to protect what he'd already lost. Within hours, black SUVs rolled through Claire's street, her name tangled in betrayal she didn't commit, and her little girl's future placed in hands she didn't trust. Who is Ethan really? A ruthless captor or a protector haunted by his own scars? Can a single mother cling to love for her child while walking a line between fear and salvation? And when the past comes crashing back, will family be rebuilt or destroyed forever? This is a story of mistakes, of shadows, and of unexpected light. If you believe in the strength of a mother's love, stay with us, like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and let's begin the journey together. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, its weary hands dragging through another restless hour. In the small duplex on the east side of Austin, the air was heavy with the smell of old carpet and reheated soup. A single lamp cast a weak glow across the living room, leaving corners swallowed in shadows. The coffee table was buried under a scatter of bills, some stamped in red, others folded from being opened and read too many times. Claire Bennett sat hunched on the worn couch, her shoulders drawn tight beneath a faded sweatshirt. 35 years old and already feeling twice that. She rubbed her temples with trembling fingers. Her eyes stung from fatigue, but she didn't dare close them. From the back bedroom came the faint, irregular cough of her daughter, followed by a small whimper. It pulled Claire upright like a string had been tugged. She padded barefoot down the narrow hall, the wood floor creaking under her steps. The bedroom smelled faintly of children's shampoo and the sharp tang of fever. Maya lay curled in a tangle of blankets, her blonde curls damp against her flush skin. She clutched a stuffed rabbit whose seams were worn from years of love. The child's breath came shallow and uneven, each exhale wheezing faintly. Claire touched her forehead, whispering to herself, though the child couldn't hear. Still burning up. Her heart clenched as she wrung out the washcloth in a chipped bowl of cool water and laid it across the girl's brow. Maya stirred, but did not wake. The doctor's words from last week still rang in her ears. The sooner we schedule the bone marrow transplant, the better her chances. But without the deposit, we cannot move her forward on the list. Claire had nodded at the time, clutching her purse tighter, pretending she could make it happen. She hadn't told them she was already 3 months behind on rent. Back in the living room, Claire stared at the stack of envelopes as though they were enemies. Electricity, water, insurance, each demanding payment she didn't have. Her job as an executive secretary at Caldwell Meridian paid enough to scrape by in normal times. But this was not normal. Maya's illness devoured every spare dollar. Claire pulled out her phone, the screen lighting her tired face. She scrolled to Derek's number. Once, years ago, she had believed his promises, believed he would stand beside her when life got hard. Now, he was nothing more than a shadow at the other end of the line, answering only when it suited him. Still, he was Maya's father. Still, she clung to the hope he might find a shred of decency. Her thumbs trembled as she typed, "Derek, you said you'd send the money this week. The hospital is waiting for the deposit. Maya's fever hasn't broken for 3 days. Please, she needs the surgery. Don't stay silent." She read it twice, her throat tight, then hit send before fear could stop her. The message floated away, a tiny lifeline tossed into the dark. Claire leaned back, her chest rising and falling too fast, her ears straining toward the bedroom. Maya coughed again, then settled. The phone buzzed almost immediately. Claire's pulse leapt. Derek had never answered so quickly. She swiped the screen with anxious fingers. The reply was short. 4 words. "Are you Claire Bennett?" She blinked. Not Derek's usual evasions, Not even his familiar number. She checked again. The digits were unfamiliar, cold and impersonal. Panic shot through her. She typed quickly. "Sorry, wrong number. Please ignore." She closed the thread, reopened Derek's, and began another message. "Did you change your number?" Her thumb hovered above. Send. The phone buzzed again. Another message from that unfamiliar contact. "Your daughter has had a fever for 3 days." Claire froze. Her blood ran cold. She glanced toward the hallway, where Maya lay vulnerable behind a thin door. No one outside this house should know that. No one but her and Derek. Her breath came shallow. Her fingers stumbled across the screen. "Who are you? How do you know this?" The reply did not come right away. Only the silence of the duplex pressed in, punctuated by the hum of the old refrigerator and the rasping cough of her child. Claire rose on unsteady legs and pulled back the living room curtain. Outside, the street glistened under the weak glow of streetlights. Usually, at this hour, only a few cars lined the curb. Tonight, 3 black SUVs idled silently, their headlights off, their engines barely audible. Her stomach dropped. At first she told herself they belonged to neighbors, late visitors, anyone but strangers watching her. Then a 4th vehicle rolled into place, then a 5th, lining the block with quiet menace. The rain from earlier had left the pavement shining, and in it she saw the distorted reflection of her own fear. She let the curtain fall and backed away, her hands trembling. She locked the door, sliding the chain across with a metallic click that sounded far too small against the thread outside. The phone lit again. A new message glowed across the cracked screen. "Don't call the police. Open up. We need to talk about Derek Lawson." Claire's breath caught. Derek's full name. Whoever this was, they knew him and they knew her. Her knees weakened and she sank into the chair. Maya coughed again, fragile and helpless. The sound pierced through Claire's fear, anchoring her in the one truth that mattered. Whatever was happening outside, whatever shadow Derek had dragged into their lives, she had to protect her daughter. Her phone buzzed once more. She forced her hand to lift it. The screen flashed a final message. "Ethan Caldwell?" Her heart lurched. The name was unmistakable. Her boss. The man who owned the company where she typed schedules and arranged flights. A man whose wealth and reputation hovered like a myth in the city. Now his name appeared on her cheap phone, tied to black SUVs outside her window. The room seemed to close in, the air thick and unbreathable. Claire clutched the phone, whispering to herself, "What has Derek done to us?" And as another set of footsteps echoed down the hall outside her apartment, Claire knew this night was only the beginning. The curtain still swayed where Claire had dropped it. Her breath fogged the glass as she pressed closer once more, unable to keep from looking outside. The black SUVs hadn't moved. They sat like silent animals in the misty night. Engines idling low, headlights dark, each one gleaming faintly under the street lamp. Her duplex had always been quiet. Neighbors kept to themselves, the most noise coming from a barking dog or a passing delivery truck. Tonight, the street felt transformed foreign, guarded, no longer hers. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She backed away from the window, her hands trembling against the curtain. The silence inside the duplex was suddenly too fragile, as if a single sound might shatter it. Maya coughed again from the bedroom, a thin, weary sound that reminded Claire of just how small her daughter was. She hurried to her side, tucking the blankets tighter, smoothing damp hair from her forehead. "Mommy's here," she whispered, though her own voice shook. The phone buzzed in her palm. She almost dropped it. Another message glowed on the cracked screen. "Don't make this harder. We're here for your safety. Open the door." Her throat closed. Safety. The word felt twisted in this context, surrounded by black vehicles and unknown men. The old clock ticked louder. The refrigerator hummed. Every sound in the duplex seemed to magnify, stretching the seconds. Then 3 firm knocks. They reverberated through the thin door, each one deep and deliberate, like a judge's gavel striking wood. Claire's chest tightened. She held her breath, staring toward the door, as though silence might make her invisible. Claire Bennett, a voice called, low, commanding. It carried through the hall with chilling ease. "Open up! We don't have time!" She clutched Maya's stuffed rabbit to her chest before realizing what she was doing. Her legs moved stiffly, carrying her to the door. She pressed an eye to the peephole. A tall man in a dark coat stood straight-backed, shoulders broad, eyes sharp even under the dim hallway light. Another stood behind him, bulkier, scanning the surroundings with trained precision. Claire's breath hitched. She backed away from the door, her mind spinning. Who were they? What did Derek drag her into? Her phone buzzed again. Ethan Caldwell. Open the door. Her knees weakened. Ethan, her boss. The man whose signature hung on every corporate memo, whose name appeared in the business section of the Austin Chronicle. She had seen him in passing, tall and remote in boardrooms, but never close enough to hear his voice. Now he stood outside her door in the middle of the night. "Mommy," the small voice behind her cut through the panic. Maya stood barefoot in the hall, rubbing her eyes, the stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. Fever flushed her cheeks, and her small frame swayed as though even standing was too much. Claire rushed to her, dropping to her knees. She pulled her close, wrapping arms around the fragile body. "Sweetheart, stay quiet. Okay, stay with Mommy." The knocks came again, steadier this time, unyielding. Claire's chest constricted. She looked around the duplex, her safe place reduced to 4 thin walls and a locked door. The thought of police crossed her mind, but the message had warned her. And even if she called, what would she tell them? That her boss was outside with a fleet of black cars, that strangers somehow knew about Maya's fever. Another cough racked the child in her arms. Claire pressed her cheek against Maya's hot forehead, desperation rising. Whatever was waiting outside, she couldn't protect her daughter alone. With trembling fingers, she slid the chain off the lock. The metal scraped loud in the silence. She cracked the door open. The tall man from the peephole filled the frame. His eyes, icy blue, flicked to Maya instantly before returning to Claire. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, his voice low and steady. "You need to come with us. Now." Claire shook her head, clutching Maya tighter. "Why? Who are you really? Why are you here behind the man?" Ethan Caldwell stepped forward. The hall light caught the sharp lines of his face, the calm authority that seemed to surround him. He wore no expression of apology, only a cool certainty. "This isn't about you," Ethan said evenly. His gaze settled on Maya, then back to Claire. "It's about Derek Lawson, and your safety." Claire's stomach dropped at the sound of Derek's name. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her voice caught in her throat. The bulkier man stepped forward, holding out a steadying hand as if to guide her. Claire flinched back. "I won't leave my home," she whispered, though the words sounded small even to her. Ethan's gaze narrowed, but his tone didn't change. "You have no choice. If you stay, you put her at risk." The weight of his words pressed hard, behind him. The silent line of SUVs waited in the mist like watchful sentries. Claire's arms tightened around Maya. The little girl's head sagged against her shoulder, too weak to understand the danger unfolding. Her choices shrank to nothing. Without another word, she stepped into the hall. The men closed in, one at her side, another falling behind. Ethan led the way, his stride deliberate, the hall echoing with the sound of polished shoes and Claire's hesitant steps. The stairwell smelled faintly of rain and dust. Down each flight. Claire's panic grew, her grip on Maya fierce. When they reached the door, the damp night air swept in, carrying the hum of oiling engines. The SUVs loomed larger up close, black paint gleaming under the flickering streetlight. Doors opened silently, as though rehearsed. "Inside," Ethan said. Claire hesitated at the threshold, looking back once at the faint glow of her apartment window. Her life, her bills, her struggles, everything she knew stood behind her. Ahead waited only shadows and strangers. But Maya coughed again, her small body shuddering in her arms. Claire stepped forward. The door of the nearest SUV swung open. She climbed in, cradling her daughter close. The leather seat was cold against her legs. A guard shut the door with a solid thud, sealing them inside. The world she knew vanished in that instant. The hum of engines grew louder. The city outside blurred behind tinted glass. Claire pressed Maya tighter to her chest, her heart hammering. She had no idea where they were taking her, only that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The drive through the night felt endless. Claire sat stiffly in the back seat, Maya resting weakly in her arms. Rain washed down the tinted windows, turning the outside world into streaks of silver and shadow. The convoy of SUVs moved as one, engines steady, headlights cutting across the dark highway. Her body ached from holding Maya so tightly, but she didn't dare loosen her grip. The child's skin still burned with fever. Each soft cough was a reminder of the clock that never stopped ticking. No one spoke. The silence in the vehicle pressed down heavier than the rain outside. Claire stole glances at Ethan Caldwell across from her. He sat composed, one elbow resting on the armrest, eyes fixed ahead. His presence filled the space without effort, the kind of authority that made words unnecessary. When the city lights faded behind them, the roads grew narrower, winding into the Texas hill country. The land spread wide and untamed, limestone hills rising against the horizon. Claire's nerves knotted tighter with every mile. At last, the convoy turned down a long gravel drive. Floodlights illuminated stone pillars at the entrance, carved with the Caldwell family crest. Beyond them stretched acres of pasture, dotted with dark silhouettes of oak trees. The main house rose out of the mist like something from another time, built of pale limestone. Its walls caught the beams of the SUVs and glowed faintly gold. Wide porches wrapped around its frame. A barn and smaller outbuildings stood nearby, shadows against the hill. The SUVs rolled into a courtyard paved with smooth stone. The engines quieted one by one. Claire's heart pounded as the door beside her opened. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of cedar and wet earth. Ethan stepped out first. Guards followed, their movements sharp, efficient. One reached for Claire's door. She clutched Maya tighter, instinctively leaning back. "You're safe here," Ethan said, his voice even. He held the door open himself this time. "Come." Her legs trembled as she stepped down, her daughter heavy in her arms. The ground felt solid but foreign beneath her bare shoes. The house loomed above, silent and imposing. Inside, the foyer gleamed with polished stone floors and high ceilings. Chandeliers hung like frozen light. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and clean wood. Everything was ordered, spotless, without a trace of dust or clutter. A woman appeared from a side hallway. Silver hair framed her lined face, her black dress simple but elegant. Her eyes were sharp, assessing Claire in a single glance, before softening as they landed on Maya. "Welcome," she said. "I'm Rosa. Your rooms are prepared." Claire followed Rosa up a wide staircase, the sound of her own footsteps muffled by thick carpet. They reached a suite on the east side of the house. When Rosa opened the door, Claire nearly gasped. The room had been transformed into something between a guest chamber and a medical ward. A hospital bed stood ready, its white linens crisp. Machines hummed quietly at the bedside. A plush armchair sat nearby, clearly placed for a caregiver. In one corner, a small shelf overflowed with new toys and picture books. Claire's throat tightened. Someone had planned all of this, as though expecting them. "You'll stay with her here," Rosa said gently. "If you need anything, ring this bell." Claire laid Maya on the bed, tucking the blankets around her. The girl stirred faintly, eyes half open, then sank back into shallow sleep. Ethan entered the room then, his coat folded over his arm. He stood near the doorway, his presence commanding even in silence. Finally, he spoke. "From this moment," he said, "you and your daughter are under my protection. Her treatment every cost. Every doctor will be handled. But in return, I expect your cooperation." Claire turned, her hands tightening on the blanket. "Cooperation in what?" "In drawing Derek Lawson out," Ethan replied. His tone was flat, factual. "He betrayed me. And now he uses your desperation to cover his trail. You will help us find him." Her stomach churned. The thought of Derek exploiting Maya's illness twisted like a knife. Ethan gestured to one of his men, who stepped forward with a sleek black phone. "Your device will be kept in secure storage. From now on, you use this. Every message you send to Derek will be mirrored. Nothing hidden." Claire's pulse raced. She wanted to argue, to refuse, but Maya's faint cough pulled her back. This wasn't about pride, it was about survival. Before she could respond, the door opened again. A woman in a white coat entered, carrying a medical bag. Her blonde hair was tied back neatly, and her expression was calm, professional. "Dr. Eliza Warren." She introduced herself. "Pediatric hematology." Claire's breath caught. She stepped aside as the doctor approached the bed. "Hello, Maya, doctor," Warren said softly, though the child barely stirred. She unpacked supplies quickly, moving with practiced ease. Claire hovered at the bedside, her heart thudding as the doctor prepared an IV. When the needle slipped into her daughter's small hand, Maya whimpered weakly. "Shh, sweetheart," Claire whispered, stroking her hair. "Mommy's right here. I won't let go." Tears burned at the edges of her eyes. She wanted to turn away but forced herself to watch, to be present. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Ethan standing by the doorway. He didn't move, didn't intervene, only watched as the doctor worked. His face was unreadable, his eyes steady, almost too steady. The IV taped in place. The machine began its quiet rhythm. Claire bent close, kissing Maya's temple, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "No one will take you from me," she murmured. "Not ever." The words were meant for her daughter, but a part of her knew Ethan heard them too. And as the night deepened in that house of stone, Claire understood that every rule, every condition, every moment here would test the limits of how far a mother could go to keep her child safe. The night stretched long inside the Caldwell estate. Claire had sat for hours in the armchair by Maya's bed, listening to the quiet hum of the IV and the child's shallow breathing. Each beep of the monitor steadied her for a moment, only to leave her restless again. When Maya finally drifted into deeper sleep, Claire rose, her legs stiff. She needed to move, if only to shake off the heaviness pressing down on her chest. She opened the suite door quietly and stepped into the hallway. The house was hushed, its stone walls carrying faint echoes of her footsteps. Golden sconces lit the corridor in soft pools of light. The air smelled faintly of beeswax and cedar, a reminder of how carefully everything here was tended. As she passed a side alcove, Claire stopped. On a narrow table stood a framed photograph of a young woman with gentle eyes and dark hair. Before it, a single white candle burned low, its flame wavering in the draft. The sight caught Claire off guard. In this fortress of polished stone and strict rules, here was a fragile gesture of memory. She leaned closer. The woman's smile was faint, almost wistful, and Claire felt a pang of recognition. Grief softened by time, but never erased. "You found Julia." The voice startled her. She turned sharply. Ethan stood a few feet away, his presence quiet but commanding as ever. His hands were in his pockets, his eyes fixed on the photograph. "She was my sister," he said after a pause. His voice was lower, steadier than usual, but edged with something raw. "She had a blood disorder, not unlike your daughter's." Claire's breath caught. The connection settled heavily in the air. Ethan moved closer, his gaze lingering on the candle. "I was younger then, believed money could fix anything, but no matter how much I spent, No matter how many doctors I hired, I couldn't save her. Julia died at 28. It changed everything for me. I swore no one under my care would be lost because of neglect or betrayal again. He looked at Claire then, his eyes sharp as glass. That's why Derek's betrayal cuts deeper than money. He used your access to siphon classified data. Do you understand what that means? Claire's pulse quickened. My access. Ethan nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward carrying a tablet. The screen glowed with a series of login records. These entries came from your account, Ethan said. Sensitive files downloaded from company servers. Dates, times, all tied to your credentials. Claire stared, her mouth dry. She remembered those days-long hours at her desk, juggling schedules, emails, flights. Could Derek have slipped in somehow? Borrowed her password without her noticing? I didn't do this, she whispered. I would never. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. I believe you didn't knowingly. But the system doesn't lie. Derek used you, just as he used your daughter's illness. He left his trail on your name, not his. The weight of his words crushed her. Images flashed through her mind, Derek borrowing her laptop, offering to fix a software update, even insisting once on taking her phone for a quick sync. She hadn't questioned it. She had been too tired, too distracted by bills and doctor visits. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table, the candle's flame flickering close. If this is all under my name, then the company, the police, they'll see you as complicit. Ethan finished. His tone was matter-of-fact, almost cold. Unless we catch him, that's why you must cooperate. It's the only way to clear your record. Claire's chest tightened. She thought of Maya sleeping just down the hall, IV humming steadily. What would happen if her mother were arrested? If the hospital refused treatment because of pending charges? Her knees weakened. She sank onto the bench beneath the photograph, clutching her hands together. The candle's glow blurred as tears welled. Ethan remained standing, a shadow stretching long across the polished floor. I don't say this to frighten you, he said, softer now. But you need to understand the stakes. Derek doesn't care whose life he burns. He's already set fire to yours. I'm offering you a way out. Claire lifted her gaze, eyes shining. For the first time, she saw not just the ruthless businessman, but a brother who had lost someone too soon, who had built his fortress of rules on the ashes of grief. Still, fear gnawed at her. And if I fail? If Derek slips away, Ethan's eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. Then I won't let him take you down with him, but I expect you not to fail. The words cut sharp, duty, command, and the faintest trace of promise. Claire swallowed hard, rising slowly. She brushed past him, back toward the suite. Each step felt heavier, as though the stone floors themselves were pressing against her feet. Inside the room, Maya stirred at the sound of the door. Claire rushed to her, kneeling by the bed, taking her small hand in both of hers. The girl's eyes half opened, cloudy with fever. "Mommy," she murmured weakly. "I'm here," Claire whispered, pressing her forehead against Maya's hand. "I won't let anyone take you from me. Not ever." But as the machines hummed and the candle's image lingered in her mind, Claire knew the truth. Derek had already dragged her name through the mud. Tomorrow, if anything went wrong, the world might see her not as a mother fighting for her child, but as a criminal standing beside a thief. She kissed Maya's hand, whispering again, more for herself than for the child. "We'll get through this. Somehow." And in the silence that followed, Claire held on tighter, as though sheer force of love might keep the shadows from closing in. The message on the screen glowed in the dim light of the suite. 4 simple words. "I have cash." Claire's fingers hovered above the phone, her chest tight as she hit send. The reply came almost instantly, faster than any answer Derek had given her in months. "Blue Bonnet Diner, tomorrow. 10, don't be late." Claire's stomach twisted. The name of the diner pulled her back years, to Sunday breakfast when she and Derek had still been a family, back when pancakes and black coffee felt like love. Now the same place had become a trap, bait laid bare, across the room. Ethan stood with arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he studied the phone mirrored on his tablet. He took it, he said flatly, as expected. His certainty only deepened her unease. The fire in the stone hearth crackled faintly, throwing shadows along the walls. Claire pulled her sweater tighter. She had sat through the evening listening to Ethan's team outline the plan, surveillance vans near the diner, plainclothes agents at every booth, a microphone hidden in her jacket. She was to hand over the envelope, press him to confirm the deposit, and let the evidence seal itself. But all the rehearsed steps couldn't quiet the storm inside her. Derek wasn't just a fugitive, he was Maya's father. How could she face him tomorrow without breaking? Maya stirred in bed, a small sound escaping her lips. Claire rushed to her side, touching her forehead. Hot again. The fever had returned, a faint sheen of sweat dampening the child's temples. "She's spiking," Claire whispered. Panic shot through her, undoing every ounce of calm she had tried to gather. "Doctor," Warren adjusted the IV, her tone steady. "It's mild, expected with her condition. Fluids and rest will help. Don't worry, don't worry." Easy words from someone who hadn't lived 3 nights of fever breaking and rising, of listening for every breath. Claire brushed damp curls from her daughter's face. "Mommy's here," she whispered, though her own voice cracked. Behind her, the door clicked open. One of Ethan's men stepped inside, broad-shouldered, his radio crackling low. He leaned toward Ethan, murmuring. Perimeter sweep picked up movement. Someone was watching from the tree line. They bolted before we could catch them. Claire froze. Her hand tightened on Maya's blanket. "Derek," she asked, her voice barely audible. The guard didn't answer. Ethan's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "Double patrols," he ordered. "No one gets within a mile without clearance." The guard nodded and left. The door shut, but the sense of safety didn't return. Claire sank into the armchair, her limbs heavy with exhaustion. She had barely slept since the night they were taken from her duplex. Every sound in this house seemed amplified, the hum of machines, the creak of stones settling, the faint shuffle of guards in the hall. Sleep felt impossible, yet her body ached for it. Ethan moved closer, his voice quieter now. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." Claire shook her head, forcing a weary smile. "Mothers don't rest." For a moment. His eyes softened, though his face stayed composed. He didn't argue. Later, when Dr. Warren had gone and the house settled into silence, Claire sat by the window. The glass reflected her pale face, hollow with worry. Beyond it stretched the dark land of the hill country, oaks swaying in the wind, then movement. A shadow flickered near the tree line, gone as quickly as it appeared. Claire's breath hitched, her pulse thundered in her ears. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, straining to see. Nothing, just darkness, branches bending in the wind. Her hand shook as she drew the curtains closed. She whispered to herself, "Just the wind, just the wind." But the chill creeping up her arms told her she didn't believe it. She turned back to Maya, who slept uneasily. Her little hand curled around the stuffed rabbit. Claire knelt beside her, laying her own hand over the child's. Tomorrow they would walk into danger together. She would have to sit across from Derek, the man who once promised to build her a life, and push him to expose himself. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was no place left to go. Claire lowered her head to the blanket, closing her eyes against the sting of tears. Her body shook with fatigue, but she forced her breathing to slow, whispering the words she needed Maya to believe, even if she didn't herself. "We'll be okay. Mommy won't let go. Not tomorrow. Not ever." The fire in the hearth dimmed to embers. The candle in the hall burned lower. And the house, wrapped in stone and shadows, seemed to hold its breath with her. Morning would come, and with it, the diner, Derek, and the moment everything would either shatter or begin to heal. The night before the meeting at Bluebonnet Diner broke into fragments. each hour dragging longer than the last. Claire had tried to rest, curled in the armchair beside Maya's bed, but her daughter's fever rose suddenly, shattering even the illusion of sleep. The monitor beside the bed beeped with quick, anxious tones. Numbers flickered red, climbing higher. The room, already cold, filled with the sharp sting of disinfectant and the soft hiss of the humidifier. Claire's heart raced as she touched Maya's forehead. The heat under her palm was frightening, searing. The little girl's lashes fluttered, and her lips whispered, "Mommy," before another cough shook her thin chest. "I'm here, baby," Claire murmured, her voice trembling. She grabbed the call button with clumsy fingers. The door opened within moments. Dr. Eliza Warren stepped inside, her hair pulled back, eyes sharp even at this hour. She moved quickly, adjusting IV fluids, readying a syringe. A nurse followed, rolling in a tray of supplies. Claire backed against the wall, wringing her hands. Every sound, the rip of sterile packaging, the beep of machines, the faint moan from her daughter stabbed into her. She wanted to help, but all she could do was hover, whispering, "Hold on, baby, hold on." From the hallway came another sound, slow, measured footsteps. Ethan Caldwell appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak, didn't intrude. He leaned against the frame, his face shadowed in the low light, eyes fixed on the bed. For once, his expression wasn't carved in stone. The weight in his gaze was unmistakable, the kind of heaviness that comes from remembering what couldn't be undone. Claire thought of Julia's photograph, the candle burning low. Minutes stretched like hours until finally, Dr. Warren stepped back. "Her fever is breaking," she said calmly. "The fluids and medication are working. She'll rest easier now." Claire collapsed onto the chair, pressing her face into her hands. Relief poured through her in waves, but it left her trembling, drained of strength. She reached for Maya's hand again, whispering thank yous that felt too small. Ethan moved closer, his presence filling the room. For a moment, Claire braced for a lecture, another reminder of the plan. Instead, he only asked, quietly, "Is she stable, Dr.?" Warren nodded. "She's in no danger tonight." Ethan's shoulders eased a fraction. He gave the doctor a brief nod, then turned his gaze back to Claire. "Rest while you can. Tomorrow doesn't wait. Rest." The word felt cruel. Claire's body ached, her eyelids heavy, but her heart refused to slow. Tomorrow meant facing Derek, sitting across from him with lies and money between them. The thought hollowed her out. Hours passed in fragments. Claire dozed against the chair, waking at every small movement from Maya, every sigh of the machines. She drifted into half-dreams of the diner, Derek's grin, the envelope of cash. Each time she startled awake, the room was the same, her daughter pale. Ethan's men patrolling beyond the door, the night pressing heavy against the stone walls. Just before dawn, Ethan entered again. He held a plain envelope, thick and heavy. He set it on the side table, the sound of it landing impossibly loud in the quiet room. Claire stared at it. The weight inside was unmistakable. "Real cash," Ethan said simply. "He'll believe it." Her stomach knotted. She couldn't bring herself to touch it. It looked too much like betrayal wrapped in paper. Ethan leaned slightly closer, his voice low, deliberate. "Don't try to be clever. Don't embellish. Hand it over. Let him say the words. That's all we need." Claire swallowed hard. "And if he sees through it," Ethan's eyes didn't waver, "then I'll be there." The certainty in his tone both steadied and unsettled her. He spoke like a man who never allowed for failure. Yet the risks felt endless. She finally reached for the envelope. Her fingers brushed the paper, and a chill ran up her arms. She imagined Derek's hands closing around it, his smile, his voice. She closed her eyes and whispered, "For Maya." Ethan said nothing, but his gaze lingered on her, as though he understood. The window began to pale with the first light of morning. Shadows thinned, giving way to the faint blush of dawn over the hill country. Birds stirred in the trees outside, their songs faint but insistent. Claire stood, brushing a stray curl from Maya's forehead. The fever had eased, her breathing steadier. Relief was fleeting, though. The next hours would decide everything. She pulled on her jacket, tucking the envelope into her bag. Her hands shook, but her steps were steady, behind her. Ethan's voice came one last time, quiet, almost a vow. Remember, let him speak, then it ends. Claire turned, meeting his eyes. For the first time, she didn't see only a ruthless man. She saw someone carrying his own ghosts, standing beside hers. She gave a small nod. The sun broke over the horizon, spilling gold across the stone floor. The convoy waited outside, engines warming, doors open. Claire bent over her daughter, kissing her forehead. "I'll be back soon. Sweetheart, hold on for Mommy." Her heart clenched as she straightened. She tightened her grip on the bag, on the weight of money and risk inside it. The world beyond the ranch was waiting. The diner, Derek. The test she could neither escape nor delay. And as the first rays of dawn spilled across the Texas hills, Claire stepped toward it, knowing there was no turning back. The bell above the door jingled faintly as Claire stepped into Bluebonnet Diner. The smell hit her first burnt coffee lingering too long on the warmer, bacon grease that never quite left the griddle. The sound followed spoons clinking against ceramic, the hiss of the fryer, muted conversation from booths lined with red vinyl. Her hand tightened on her bag until her knuckles whitened. Inside it sat the envelope, thick and heavy, every dollar a weapon disguised as currency. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, but she forced her steps forward. The diner looked almost unchanged from years ago. Same neon sign buzzing faintly in the window. Same counter stools with cracked seats. She remembered sitting here once with Derek, Maya still a baby in her arms. Derek spinning promises like cotton candy. She had believed every word back then. Now he was here again, sitting in a corner booth. He lifted his head when she entered, and there it was, the smile. Smooth, confident. The same one that had drawn her in years ago. But beneath it, she saw the edges. Sharper now. Hunger replacing charm. "Claire," Derek said, leaning back casually as though this were nothing more than a reunion. His eyes darted to the bag. "You brought it." Her throat tightened. She slid into the booth across from him, the vinyl squeaking under her weight. The table between them felt too small, as though the years apart had shrunk to this single moment. "You said you'd help." She managed. Her voice sounded thin, distant even to her own ears. "I am helping," Derek replied smoothly. He extended his hand, palm open, expectant. "The money, Claire. This is the deposit for Maya's bed at the hospital. You want her safe, don't you?" The words twisted inside her. He used their daughter's name so easily, like a tool. Claire felt heat rise to her face, but she kept her hand steady as she unzipped the bag. The envelope slid into her grasp, its weight sinking her stomach. She didn't pass it right away. She set it slowly on the table, her fingers still resting on it. Derek's eyes gleamed, his smile widening. "Say it," she whispered, surprising herself with the firmness in her tone. Derek tilted his head. "Say what?" "The deposit." She pressed. "For the contract, for her bed." His brows drew together briefly, then smoothed. He chuckled, leaning forward on his elbows. "Yes, Claire, the deposit contract, for the hospital bed." The words rang out clear. The diner's hum swallowed them, but Claire knew somewhere through hidden wires. Through mirrored glass they were captured. Her heart hammered. She let go of the envelope. Derek snatched it up quickly, sliding it inside his jacket. For a moment, his charm cracked into greed. Claire's stomach churned. Across the booth, she saw him as he was now, not the man who had once kissed her forehead in this same diner, but a stranger who wore that man's face. The bell above the door jingled again. Two men entered, their presence casual, yet too deliberate. Derek didn't notice. too busy tucking the envelope closer. Claire did. She recognized one of Ethan's men instantly, though he wore a baseball cap pulled low. Her pulse pounded louder. She stood abruptly. Derek looked up, frowning. "Where are you going? I need air," she whispered. Her voice wavered, but her steps didn't. The air outside was cool, sharp with morning. She moved quickly toward the parking lot, her chest tight, behind her. The diner door opened again, heavy boots striking the pavement. "Derek Lawson," a firm voice commanded. Claire froze, her breath catching. She turned just in time to see Derek stiffen, his body twisting toward the sound. Two men closed in, their movements swift, unyielding. Another figure stepped from a car parked nearby Ethan, his stride calm, precise. For a split second, Derek's mask slipped. His smile faltered, eyes flashing with recognition and fear. He cursed under his breath, trying to push past. But the men tightened around him, a practiced circle. Claire pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart beat wildly, as though trying to escape. She could hardly hear the words exchanged, only the sudden weight of finality in the air. Derek struggled, but the envelope fell from his jacket, caught swiftly by one of the men. The sound of leather scraping against pavement seemed louder than it should have. Claire turned away, unable to watch more. Her vision blurred as she stared at the cracked asphalt of the parking lot, the faint outline of oil stains, the cigarette butts ground into the ground. Ordinary details of an ordinary place, while her past unraveled behind her. A hand touched her arm lightly. She flinched, then looked up. Ethan stood beside her now. His expression was calm, almost unreadable, but his eyes carried the weight of something heavier. "It's done," he said quietly. Claire nodded, unable to speak. The truth pressed down on her whatever life she had before, whatever fragile hope she held that Derek might change. It ended here in this diner's shadow. Her hands shook as she wrapped her arms around herself. She forced herself to walk forward, each step stiff, mechanical. Behind her, voices rose, firm commands. Derek's protests swallowed by the sound of car doors slamming. Claire didn't look back again. She opened the SUV door, slid inside, and pulled it shut. The world outside dulled instantly, replaced by the quiet thrum of the engine. Her reflection stared back at her in the tinted glass, pale, shaken, but unbroken. She pressed her forehead to the cool window. Her heart still raced, but she knew the truth, the life she had known, the man she had once trusted, were gone. Ahead waited only the unknown. And for the first time, she let herself whisper it aloud, barely audible over the hum of the engine. "It's over." But deep inside, she knew it wasn't. Not yet. The real reckoning was still to come. The old wine cellar had been stripped of its barrels and charm, leaving nothing but cold stone walls and the scent of damp earth. In the center of the room sat a single metal chair, its legs bolted to the floor. Derek was bound to it, wrists cuffed tight against the armrests, ankles shackled. The overhead light was merciless, a harsh neon white that bleached every shadow from his face. Sweat already streaked his brow, though the cellar was cool. His lips pressed into a thin line, jaw twitching with nervous defiance. Across from him, Ethan Caldwell didn't move at first. He simply stood, arms crossed, his presence filling the room more than any threat could. Silence stretched, thick and punishing. Derek shifted, trying to clear his throat. "This is illegal," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "You can't keep me here. Claire will back me up." Ethan tilted his head slightly, as though observing an insect. He didn't answer. The silence deepened, pressing down until Derek began to fidget in his chair, his bravado leaking out through restless movements. Finally, Ethan spoke. His tone was even low, but each word landed like a stone. "Claire is watching right now." Derek stiffened. His eyes flicked toward the mirrored panel on the wall. Though he couldn't see through it, she wouldn't. "She already has." Ethan cut in smoothly. "She saw the diner. She heard you say it. The deposit contract, that's on record. You used your daughter's illness to bleed her dry? Derek's face twitched. His smile faltered, but he forced it back. I was just trying to help. Ethan stepped closer, the soles of his shoes clicking softly against the cement. Help who? Yourself? The silence afterward was louder than any shout. Derek swallowed, his throat bobbing, his eyes darting between the light above and Ethan's shadow. You don't understand, he said finally, voice cracking. I needed the money to disappear. Ethan finished for him. His gaze was sharp, unwavering, not for Claire, not for Maya, for you. At the sound of Maya's name, Derek's face tightened. His denial crumbled faster now. His chest rose and fell too quickly, the thin fabric of his shirt clinging with sweat. Leave her out of this, he spat. You already dragged her in, Ethan replied, his voice still maddeningly calm. You dangled her life as leverage. You thought Claire was weak enough to keep paying. You thought no one would notice. For a long moment, the cellar was filled only with Derek's shallow breathing and the faint hum of the light. Claire stood on the other side of the glass, her hands clenched so tightly they ached, every word carved into her like glass. Ethan leaned down slightly, close enough that Derek could see the ice in his eyes. The data, he said. Where is it? Derek let out a broken laugh. Too high, too thin. What data? I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan straightened, his silence once again more cutting than rage. He turned, walking slowly toward the door, as though Derek no longer mattered. The sound of his footsteps echoed against the stone. Wait, Derek called out, panic seeping in now. His chair rattled against the bolts as he jerked against the cuffs. You can't just... Ethan paused at the door, not turning. I can, he said quietly, and I will, unless you decide to speak. The weight of those words settled like iron in the room. Derek's chest heaved. He shook his head, then blurted, You don't know what he'll do to me. Who? Ethan asked, his tone still calm, but now laced with precision, like a surgeon cutting exactly where needed. Derek froze, lips parting, realizing too late he had said too much. His knee bounced rapidly, his body betraying the fear his mouth tried to cover. I don't know, he whispered, just someone bigger than me. Ethan returned to the center of the room, standing directly in Derek's line of sight. He spoke softly, almost kindly. Then you should be afraid of me first. Where is the data? The silence stretched until Derek's breath came in ragged bursts. The air seemed to thin, each second heavier than the last. Finally, his shoulders sagged, the mask cracked. It's at the South River warehouse, he stammered. His voice trembled. In the safe, under the floorboards. I swear, that's where it is. His words tumbled over each other, desperate to escape before Ethan walked away again. The silence that followed was final. Ethan's gaze lingered on Derek, but there was no triumph, no satisfaction, only confirmation. He turned at last toward the mirrored panel. On the other side, Claire felt her breath catch. His eyes met hers through the glass, steady, unreadable, but heavy with meaning. She realized he had known Derek would break. The silence, the calm, the unflinching patience, it had all been the plan. Her stomach twisted. The truth had spilled out, undeniable, ugly. Derek had been willing to gamble with their daughter's life for his own escape. Inside the cellar, Derek slumped against the chair, sweat glistening on his pale face, his eyes darting wildly as though still hunting for a way out. But, for the first time, Claire saw him as he truly was, not dangerous, not powerful, but small. The envelope of cash, the promises, the years of waiting, they all collapsed into dust against the single fact that now hung in the air. He would have let them both drown if it meant saving himself. Ethan gave the faintest nod toward the glass, his voice carrying evenly. It's over? But Claire knew, as her heart clenched in her chest, that nothing was truly over yet. Claire sat in the back seat of the SUV, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The glass was tinted, but not enough to block the sight in front of her. Through the open gates of the Caldwell ranch, Flashing red and blue lights painted the gravel drive, scattering across the limestone walls like shards of a broken promise. She saw him, Derek. He stumbled slightly as two federal agents guided him down the steps. His wrists were cuffed, his hair disheveled, the once smooth charm drained from his face. The man who had once kissed her hand at the altar, who had once carried Maya in the crook of his arm, now looked small, cornered, stripped of all pretense. Claire pressed a hand against the glass. Her chest ached, torn between fury and grief. How could this be the same man? How had the Derek she once loved eroded into this hollow figure, escorted by men with guns at their hips? The agents moved with efficiency, no wasted motion. One read Derek his rights, voice clipped and professional. Another carried a folder, the evidence. Ethan's meticulous preparation. Everything Derek had done, every forged contract, every stolen login, every piece of data he had intended to sell it was all there, bound and sealed. For a moment, Claire couldn't breathe. This wasn't a courtroom drama on television. This was her life unraveling in real time. Derek turned his head, eyes scanning wildly, and for a fleeting second, he found her through the tinted glass. His mouth twisted, half desperate, half enraged. "Claire!" he shouted, his voice carrying over the hum of radios and the grind of tires. "Claire, don't let them take me for Maya's sake." Her heart clenched, a reflex she hated. The sound of his voice, calling her name, still reached the part of her that remembered the man he used to be. But then she felt Maya stir beside her, small and fragile, curling closer into her side. "For Maya's sake," she whispered bitterly under her breath. "That's exactly why." Outside, Derek struggled. He twisted against the agents, his face contorting with panic. You don't know the whole story, Claire. Tell them I was trying to help." His words cracked in the air, broken glass on stone. One of the agents pressed him forward, lowering his head as they guided him toward the waiting patrol car. His voice rose, jagged and raw. "Maya," he yelled now, his voice echoing across the courtyard. "Maya, Daddy loves you, Daddy." The words were cut short when an agent pressed his head down firmly and guided him into the back seat. The door slammed shut, muffling his cries into silence. Claire's body trembled. Tears stung her eyes. Unbidden, unwanted. She hated that part of her still reacted, still remembered the softness in his touch years ago, the way he had once read bedtime stories in silly voices just to make their daughter laugh. But those memories collided violently with the truth, his betrayal. The recording of him mocking her desperation, the forged papers. He had chosen himself over them, again and again. The convoy of vehicles began to move, engines rumbling low as the gates creaked wider. Red and blue lights flared across Claire's face, across Maya's sleeping cheek, across the stone pillars of the ranch. She closed her eyes, clutching Maya tighter. Relief seeped in, fragile but undeniable. Derek was gone. He could no longer hurt them, no longer use Maya as leverage, no longer drain her of the little hope she had left. For the first time in years, a small breath of safety filled her lungs. And yet, sorrow ran beside it, tangled and sharp. This was the man she had once promised forever to. This was Maya's father. No matter how much she despised him now, his absence would leave a mark she couldn't erase. The SUV remained still as the FBI vehicles rolled away. Claire glanced sideways. Ethan sat a few feet away, his face cast in the alternating flashes of police lights. His expression didn't change, carved from stone. His eyes followed the convoy until the last taillight disappeared into the distance. "It's done," he said simply. Claire nodded, but her throat was too tight for words. She looked back at Maya, asleep with her head against Claire's arm, lashes damp against pale cheeks. The child stirred faintly, whispering something in her dream. A sharp ache pierced Claire's chest. One day, she would have to explain this to her daughter. Explain that her father hadn't been taken by chance, but by choice, his own choices, his own betrayal. The thought nearly broke her. As the SUV began to roll forward, Claire pressed a kiss to Maya's forehead, her tears soaking into the little girl's hair. "You're safe now," she whispered, though the words trembled in her mouth. Her eyes flicked back toward Ethan. He was silent, his gaze steady out the window, but his presence filled the car like iron. Claire's heart twisted again, a new fear rising alongside her fragile relief. Did he trust her, or was she still a liability in his eyes? A woman tied to Derek's sins by marriage, by shared history, by a child that carried his name. The questions pressed against her ribs, heavier than the silence that lingered between them. Outside, the night swallowed the flashing lights. The gravel road stretched ahead, dark and uncertain. Claire tightened her hold on Maya, her pulse still unsteady. Derek was gone, but the shadow of his betrayal lingered. And sitting across from her was Ethan, the man who had orchestrated it all, who had saved her daughter. Yes, but also the man who could destroy everything with a single decision. Relief and dread mingled inside her, indistinguishable, impossible to untangle. The gates of the ranch closed behind them with a heavy clang. Claire exhaled shakily, but her heart whispered the question she dared not speak aloud. Did Ethan Caldwell truly believe in her innocence, or was she simply the next piece on his board? The hallway smelled of antiseptic and freshly polished floors. Claire sat hunched on a stiff plastic chair, elbows digging into her knees, her hands clasped so tightly they were icy. The glow above the operating room door burned a solid red. In progress, her body shook as if the chill of the hospital seeped into her bones. Though she wore a sweater, she had told herself she wouldn't cry. Not here, not where Maya needed her strength. But tears blurred her vision anyway. She blinked furiously, pressing her forehead against her hands. A hand settled over hers, large, warm, steady. Claire startled. Lifting her head, Ethan sat beside her, his broad shoulders filling the narrow space of the waiting room chair. His expression was unreadable, but his grip on her hand tightened, firm and grounding. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Words felt useless when her child was behind that door, lying on a table beneath harsh surgical lights, her small chest rising and falling under anesthesia. The red glow pressed on her nerves. Claire stared at it until her eyes stung. She whispered silent prayers, half remembered from childhood. Please, God, please save her. Take anything from me, just not her. The minutes stretched into hours, each one an eternity. Nurses came and went, their shoes whispering against the linoleum. A coffee machine hissed at the end of the corridor. Somewhere, a phone rang and was quickly answered. The world continued its rhythm, oblivious to the storm raging inside Claire. Her mind betrayed her, pulling her backward. She saw Maya at 4, coughing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. She saw hospital bills stacked high on the kitchen table, Derek's name at the top of papers she couldn't pay. She remembered lying awake at night, listening to her daughter's wheeze, wondering how many more mornings they would have together. She squeezed Ethan's hand tighter. His thumb brushed once against her knuckles. Subtle, almost hesitant. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean into the touch. Time crawled. 1 hour, 2, 3. The red light remained lit, merciless in its constancy. Claire felt herself unravel. Her legs trembled. Her chest ached. She pressed her face into her palms, whispering, "I can't do this. I can't lose her." Ethan leaned closer, his voice, low and steady, broke through the panic. "You won't. She's strong, stronger than you realize." Claire swallowed hard. She wanted to believe him, but fear screamed louder. She clutched the cross pendant at her neck, the only keepsake from her mother, and prayed again. At last, the red light blinked off. A click sounded as the door opened. Claire shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her heart thudded so violently she thought she might faint. "Doctor!" Eliza Warren stepped into the hall, mask pulled down, lines of fatigue marking her face. Yet her eyes held a glimmer of light. "The transplant was successful," she said gently. Maya responded well. She'll need close monitoring, but the outlook is very good. For a heartbeat. The words didn't register. Claire swayed, gripping Ethan's hand like a lifeline. Then the meaning sank in. Her knees gave way, and she covered her mouth with trembling fingers. She's going to live. The question spilled out in a broken whisper. The doctor nodded. Yes, she's a fighter. A sob burst from Claire's chest. Uncontrollable. Raw. Tears streamed down her face, not of despair but of relief so profound it felt like breaking open. She wept into her hands, her whole body shaking. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her, strong and unyielding. Claire collapsed into his chest, the fabric of his suit dampened by her tears. His heart beat solidly beneath her ear, a steady rhythm that grounded her when her own pulse was wild. It's over, he murmured into her hair. She's safe now. Claire clung to him, not as a hostage to a protector, but as a mother who had carried fear alone for too long. The boundaries between them dissolved in that moment, washed away by relief and exhaustion. She felt his hand at the back of her head, not commanding, not cold, but gentle. The man who had once terrified her now held her as if she were fragile glass. When she finally lifted her face, her eyes swollen with tears, she saw him clearly in the fluorescent light of the hospital. Not just the ruthless CEO, not just the man who had orchestrated black SUVs and guarded gates, but someone who had stayed, someone who had not left her side for a single hour. Her chest tightened in a new way. Unfamiliar, dangerous, she whispered, barely audible. Thank you. Ethan's gaze met hers, steady, searching. For the first time, Claire felt he wasn't just a rescuer, wasn't just the architect of her survival. He was something more, something solid she hadn't known she craved. Beyond the glass, machines beeped steadily, nurses moved briskly, and life continued. But inside Claire, something shifted. Relief mingled with an awareness she couldn't yet name, but couldn't ignore. She turned back toward the door where her daughter rested, alive, safe, breathing. Her hand remained in Ethan's, fingers still entwined. For the first time in years, she wasn't holding the weight alone. The hill country had shifted with the season. The air carried the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass, and the hills rolled green beneath the broad Texas sky. At the Caldwell Ranch, the garden bloomed again. Maya ran across the lawn, her small feet unsteady but determined. Just weeks before, she had been too weak to lift her head from the pillow. Now, her laughter rose clear in the breeze, each giggle bright as wind chimes. Her blonde hair fluttered in the sunlight, cheeks flushed with new life. Claire stood at the edge of the garden, watching. Her heart swelled and ached all at once. She clutched her sweater close. Though the air was warm, relief had come, but so had the weight of what it meant Maya was alive, recovering, given another chance. On the patio, Ethan watched too. He had shed the tailored suit for a simple shirt, sleeves rolled, his shoes traded for worn leather boots. He looked less like the untouchable man of finance and more like someone who belonged here, among grass and sunlight. At lunch, they ate together under the pergola. Plates of roasted chicken and fresh bread passed across the table. Maya insisted on pouring her own lemonade, spilling half of it, and Ethan quietly handed her a napkin. Claire noticed the faint smile that touched his lips when Maya beamed with pride at doing it all by myself. Later, in the living room. The three of them sat cross-legged on the rug, Lego bricks scattered around like colorful confetti. Maya built towers that leaned precariously. Ethan worked carefully on a small boat, and Claire stacked pieces absent-mindedly, more interested in the scene before her than the plastic blocks in her hand. "Uncle Ethan!" "Look," Maya cried, holding up a crooked creation. Her voice rang with joy. Ethan looked up, one eyebrow raised. "That's impressive," he said dryly, though his eyes softened. Maya laughed, collapsing into giggles. Without thinking, she threw her arms around his neck. "You're the best!" "Uncle Ethan." The words echoed in the quiet room. Claire froze, her heart catching. She hadn't expected it, hadn't taught her daughter to call him that. It had come from Maya's own small heart, freely given. Ethan's expression shifted, something unguarded breaking through his usual composure. He held still, as if afraid to move, then gently wrapped one arm around the child. His voice was low when he answered, "Thank you, sweetheart." Claire's lips curved before she could stop them. A smile, soft and unbidden. The sight of her daughter's tiny arms around this man, the same man who had once terrified her, unraveled something inside her chest. In the evenings, Ethan joined them for story time. He sat on the edge of Maya's bed with a book in hand, his voice steady but awkward at first, stumbling over silly rhymes. Maya corrected him, giggling, and he adjusted with rare patience. Claire stood by the doorway, arms folded, watching the unlikely picture her daughter tucked safely beneath blankets. Ethan's large frame bent slightly, reading under the glow of a night lamp. When Maya drifted off to sleep, Ethan always closed the book carefully, placed it on the nightstand, and left the room without a word. But Claire noticed how his gaze lingered on the child a moment longer, as if silently vowing something no one else could hear. Days turned into weeks. Routine returned, gentle and unfamiliar. Breakfasts with sunlight pouring through tall windows. Walks in the garden, where Maya picked dandelions and blew their seeds into the sky. Evenings on the porch, where cicadas hummed and the Texas sky stretched endless. For Claire, gratitude grew heavy in her chest. She had her daughter's laughter again. She had nights where sleep wasn't haunted by fear of loss. And at the center of it all was Ethan, steady, present, relentless in his quiet way. But confusion grew too. She found herself noticing small things, the way he set down his coffee cup softly so as not to wake Maya, the way his eyes crinkled almost imperceptibly when she smiled, the way his silence sometimes carried more comfort than words. And then she would catch herself, heart racing, and force the thoughts back. She reminded herself of the truth. Ethan Caldwell was power, control, shadows. He had pulled her into this world with force, surrounded her home with black SUVs. Gratitude did not erase danger. Warmth did not erase history. Yet when Maya clung to him, calling him uncle, Claire's heart betrayed her. She saw not the king of cold decisions, but a man who might, just might, be learning how to be something else. One afternoon, as the sun dipped golden over the hills, Maya darted between them, clutching both their hands. She looked up with bright eyes, grinning. "We're a team," she declared. The words pierced Claire, sweet and sharp. She couldn't deny the truth in her daughter's joy. For that moment, they did feel like a team. That night, when Maya finally fell asleep, Claire stood by the window of her room. She looked out across the vast lawn, moonlight spilling silver over the grass. Behind her, Ethan lingered in the doorway, his presence filling the silence. Neither spoke. The unspoken pressed heavier than words. Claire closed her eyes, her thoughts twisting. She owed him gratitude beyond measure, but gratitude was not love. And staying here, in his world, meant giving up the independence she had fought so hard to keep. Her heart pulled in two directions: leave to stand on her own, or stay, and risk opening a door she had vowed never to unlock again. She turned, meeting his gaze. His eyes were steady, patient, waiting, and Claire knew soon she would have to choose. The Texas sky was pale gold, streaked with soft pink as the sun rose over the hill country. The ranch seemed to glow in the new light, every stone of the house catching the warmth. The air was cool, but the promise of heat lingered. Inside the guest room, Claire zipped the last bag. The sound was final, sharp in the quiet morning. She had folded every dress, packed Maya's toys, tucked away even the little cross pendant that had hung by the nightstand. Her chest felt heavy with each motion, as if every folded shirt carried a weight beyond fabric. Maya sat on the bed, her legs swinging, watching. When Claire reached for the bag, the child scrambled down, clutching at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy," Maya said, her voice small but insistent. "Don't go." Claire froze. The tug on her sleeve, the plea in that small voice, pierced her deeper than any argument could. She turned, kneeling to meet her daughter's eyes. "Sweetheart, I'm not leaving you. We'll always be together. But we can't stay here forever." But why, Maya asked, her brows furrowed. "Uncle Ethan makes breakfast with us. He reads stories. He keeps the monsters away. I like it here." Claire's throat tightened. She pulled Maya into her arms, breathing in the scent of her hair, still faintly like the hospital shampoo. "I know you do. But Mommy has to make sure we can stand on our own, too." Behind them, footsteps sounded in the hall. Ethan appeared in the doorway, dressed simply in jeans and a shirt, the morning light casting him half in shadow. He looked at the suitcase, then at Claire, and something flickered across his face, a mix of resignation and quiet sorrow. "You're leaving," he said, his voice low. It wasn't a question. Claire stood slowly, keeping Maya close. "I don't want to depend on anyone anymore. Gratitude isn't the same as freedom. You gave us safety. Ethan, for that, I'll never stop being thankful. But if I stay, I don't know if I'll ever find myself again." Silence stretched between them. The only sound was the faint call of meadowlarks outside. Ethan stepped into the room, his presence filling the space. His eyes were steady, but not cold as before. "Do you think I don't understand?" he asked quietly. "I built this house to be strong, to be unshakable, but inside, it's been empty for years. I've had wealth, control, walls high enough to keep out the world, and still, I've been alone." Claire held her breath. "I'm not asking you to be grateful," Ethan continued. His voice trembled once, then steadied. "I'm asking you to stay because I want a family. Because when Maya calls me uncle, it's the first time in decades I've felt like I belong to something real. And when you look at me, Claire," his words faltered, softer now. "When you look at me, I don't feel like just a man behind walls. I feel human." The confession hung in the air, raw and unvarnished. Claire's eyes blurred with sudden tears. She had seen Ethan command boardrooms, direct men with a nod, face down Derek with unflinching resolve. She had never seen him like this, unguarded, almost vulnerable. Maya wriggled free of her mother's arms and ran straight to him. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek into his shirt. "Don't be sad, Uncle Ethan. We can be a team." The man who once terrified her now bent, carefully, almost reverently, to hug the little girl back. His large hand rested on her small shoulder. He closed his eyes, and, for a moment, all the shadows seemed to fall away. Claire's chest tightened painfully. She saw them together, saw what Maya saw: safety, warmth, something like home. She stepped forward, her hand brushing the suitcase handle. She could walk away now. She could take her daughter, rebuild elsewhere, prove to herself she needed no one. Or she could set the suitcase aside and accept what stood in front of her, a man marked by loss, a child born of love and hardship, and the fragile, unexpected chance of a new beginning. Her hand slipped from the handle. She exhaled slowly, her decision settling not with a jolt, but with a quiet certainty. "Maybe," she whispered, her voice trembling, "maybe we've both been alone long enough." Ethan looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes, quickly replaced by something deeper hope, steady and profound. Claire reached for Maya, drawing her into her arms. Then, with a hesitant step, she extended her free hand toward Ethan. He took it without hesitation. His hand closed firmly over hers, warm and grounding. The three of them stood together in the soft morning light, the suitcase forgotten at their feet. Outside, the Texas sun rose higher, washing the hills in gold. The air smelled of earth and promise, of something new. Maya grinned, her arms wrapped around both adults. "See a team." Claire laughed through her tears, leaning her forehead briefly against her daughter's hair. Ethan's arm slipped around them both, steady and sure. For the first time in years, Claire didn't feel trapped or lost. She felt held. She felt home. And as the sun climbed into the sky, chasing away the last of the night, they stood together, a family rebuilt from broken pieces, a dawn without shadows. Life rarely unfolds the way we plan. Sometimes, the very moment we believe we've reached the end of our strength is when a door quietly opens. Claire's story reminds us that love, especially a mother's love, can carry us through even the darkest nights. It teaches us that trust can be rebuilt in unexpected places, and healing often comes from people who are themselves broken. For those of us who have lived long enough to know loss, disappointment, and the weight of choices, this story holds a gentle truth. We are never too old, too tired, or too wounded to find new beginnings. Family is not only the one we are born into, it can also be the one we build, piece by fragile piece, out of loyalty, compassion, and shared courage. So, when's are you? Claire Bennett Haddoes linger in your own life. Remember, this light often appears in ways we least expect. Hold on to love, hold on to hope, and don't be afraid to let others stand beside you. Sometimes the strength we need most comes not from standing alone, but from opening our hearts to a second chance. Thank you, dear friends, for spending your precious time with us today. Stories like this are meant to remind us of love, hope, and second chances, and it means so much that you chose to listen. If Claire's journey touched your heart, please give this video a like, share it with someone who might need a little light today, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life. We can't wait to share the next one with you. Until then, take care of yourself and keep believing in the quiet power of love.